The word assassin exists in almost every European language. It came from one place, a castle in the mountains of Persia. For 166 years, a few thousand people held that castle against two empires. They had no army, no cavalry, no allies. What they had was one weapon, and they used it perfectly. And almost everything you have been told about them is a story invented by the people who lost to them. Persia, 1088. The Seljuk Turks rule everything from Anatolia to the borders of India. Their empire is the strongest military power in the Islamic world. Nobody opposes it in the field and survives. Inside it lives a minority within a minority, the Nizari Ismailis, a branch of Shia Islam. They are hunted to the empire. They are heretics, and heretics are not argued with. Their leader is a scholar named Hassan-i Sabbah, a mathematician, an astronomer, a preacher. He understands something his enemies do not. He cannot win a war, so he will not fight one. In 1090, he takes the fortress of Alamut without a siege. He converts the people inside and simply walks in. The eagle's nest, 2,000 meters up, one pass in, and that pass is wide enough for one man. From there he builds something strange, a state made of castles, scattered across mountains, connected by messengers. No borders, no capital city, no territory an army could march into and take. And a doctrine that terrified every ruler in the region because it was aimed at them personally. The method was targeted killing, not massacre, not terror against crowds. One man chosen in public. The killer was called a fedai, one who sacrifices himself. He rarely intended to escape. He would spend months, sometimes years, working as a servant or a soldier near his target. And then, usually in a mosque on a Friday, in front of witnesses, he would strike once. 1092, Nizam al-Mulk, the most powerful minister of the Seljuk Empire, is killed on the road. He was the man who held the empire together. Within months, the empire begins to come apart. That single killing bought Alamut a decade. It was a whole strategy in one act. Understand what this actually was. It was the weapon of the weak against the overwhelming. An army costs a fortune and can be destroyed in an afternoon. One man costs almost nothing. And it worked because rulers understood the message: your walls do not protect you, your guards may be ours. Sultans began wearing armor under their robes. They stopped sleeping in the same room twice. One Seljuk Sultan woke to find a dagger driven into the floor beside his head. He made peace. No army had ever made a sultan negotiate. A single knife did. But a fortress state of assassins is only half the story, and it is the half their enemies wrote down. Alamut held one of the great libraries of the medieval world. Astronomy, mathematics, medicine, philosophy collected for a century and a half in a mountain fortress. Scholars came voluntarily. Some were not even Ismaili. They came because the books were there. The astronomer Nasir al-Din al-Tusi worked at Alamut and later reshaped how the world understood the sky. So where does the legend come from? The drugs, the garden, the promise of paradise? The story goes like this. The old man of the mountain drugged young men with hashish. They woke in a secret garden filled with fountains, fruit and beautiful women, and were told it was paradise. Then they were drugged again, woke in a bare cell, and told they could return by dying for their master. It is a perfect story. It explains fanaticism. It makes the enemy contemptible instead of frightening. It appears in the account of Marco Polo, written down roughly 200 years after Hassan-i Sabbah died. Polo never saw Alamut standing. By the time he passed through Persia, it had been rubble for decades. There is no Ismaili source describing a garden. None, not one. And no serious account of hashish being used to produce assassins. The drug does not do that. The word itself was an insult. Their enemies called them hashishia, rabble, low-class drug users. Crusaders heard the insult, carried it home, and it became a word in our languages for murder. The real explanation is less exotic and much harder to accept. These men believed in an imam, a cause, and a community that had been hunted for generations. People die for beliefs without any garden being involved. That is the uncomfortable part. The Syrian branch produced the most famous leader of all, Rashid al-Din Sinan. He dealt with Crusader kings and with Saladin himself, as one power speaking to another. Saladin besieged his fortress and then abruptly withdrew. He never explained why. The story told afterwards was that he woke to find warm bread and a dagger beside his bed. For 166 years it held, then something arrived that no dagger could reach. 1256. Hulagu Khan brings the Mongol army into Persia with siege engines and no interest in negotiation. The Nizari method needed an enemy with a head. The Mongols had 100 commanders and 1,000,000 men. The last imam surrendered Alamut, hoping for terms. He was killed on the road east. The castles were taken one by one and pulled down stone by stone, and the library was burned. The Persian historian Juwayni was allowed to walk through it first. He saved a handful of books, called the rest heresy, and let it go into the fire. With it went the Nizaris' own account of themselves. Their version of the story stopped existing. What survived was what their enemies had written, which is why we got the garden and the drugs. The Nizari Ismailis were not destroyed. They exist today, several million people led by the Aga Khan. They are known now for hospitals, universities, and architecture. No daggers anywhere in it. The killers in the mountains were one desperate century of a story that is still going. And the castle on the crag is still there. Broken walls, no roof, and a path wide enough for one man. Subscribe and I will keep digging this up.